I've been told the
We are loud.
wheel behind me may make it difficult to hear me, so if you let
Oh.
me know. You may not hear it at that end of the table, it's coming out of the.
I can hear you all right.
Okay, and we're good, and we're live. And Commissioner, we did our first walk through 657 yesterday. And there's a whole section on telecommunications and real estate taxes, and we also have the whole transmission line in miscellaneous tax, and don't want to pass out something that's contradictory or that doesn't work well. So that was asked you what you got.
Sure, yeah, thanks for having me in. For the record, Craig Bolio, Tax Commissioner. So I would also say, H 657 has a lot of stuff in the bill that doesn't really impact my department.
That's right.
So I'm gonna be focused on just the areas that do. There's a repeal of the telephone personal property tax in there, the telephone gross receipts tax in there. When a company pays telephone personal property tax, they don't pay property taxes. They might pay municipal taxes if the municipality taxes business personal property. If they pay telephone gross receipts taxes, they don't pay education taxes or corporate income taxes. And only a limited number of towns tax business personal property. I understand, I think our latest PBR annual report said 42 that tax machinery and equipment and 8 that tax inventory. So when this bill was first going through the House, the tax department was sort of intrigued by this idea of repealing these two taxes because they're a relatively small tax type for us. So it's about 15 taxpayers between the two of them and $2.5 million of general fund revenue a year. As tax commissioner, I love the idea of repealing small taxes so we have less overhead and funneling things through the taxes that we deal with more regularly. And when the discussion was first starting in the House, our modeling showed that it was probably pretty close to revenue neutral, although it was a trade from general fund money to ed fund money, right? You gain about 2.5 million of ed fund, you lose about 2.5 million in general fund. There was some increase in the corporate as well for the telephone gross receipts taxpayers. So at that time, that was interesting to us because we were talking about revenue neutral, repealing the small tax type. Unfortunately, the version of the bill that came out also expanded it so that all of this property would now just become part of the municipal grand list as well. So at that point, we're not talking about revenue neutral anymore. And I think the JFO estimate was maybe a $5 million up. And so the department can't endorse it in that form anymore because we're not talking about revenue neutral. In terms of the section about the department producing values and towns having to use that. Again, that made sense at that first part of the conversation because when the discussion was first about just repealing the personal property and gross receipts tax, that meant that there was going to be a lot of this telecommunications property that was going to be falling on the education grand list only, right? Because it would not have gone to the municipal grand list in most towns. And so the thought process there was, well, that's not really fair to have local officials have to value something just for the ed fund that their town isn't going to see anything of. And so the tax ordinance said, fine, we're happy to take that on and help with that. It would be new work for us. So certainly would not have been as far as we are on electric transmission and distribution, but not something that we actively sought out. I'm not sure it makes the most sense given where we are in that process now, because it would be going on to all municipal grand lists as well to be doing that. So it is different, right? The transmission and distribution and the telecommunications property, two separate
Now you
industries.
picked up all the computers and
Right.
whatever's said inside the building at the base of the tower.
Yeah.
All this transmission, all this, whatever his electronics are. I assume his chairs and tables, everything else. So if we do that, we do away with the business personal property, put everything as real estate. Do we tax computers as real estate anywhere else, business equipment as real estate?
I don't think it's real property. No,
Okay.
we've had some internal discussions about this. My general answer would be no.
Okay. So this would make some money with the ed fund, I assume that would be their purpose. But it would put it on all the grand lists of the towns.
Yeah, it defines that property as, instead of being business personal property where a subset of towns tax it, again, it makes it real property.
Okay, I assume towns tax appraise computers and electronic equipment now, it's just that this would go,
Well, I think if they tax business personal property, they may, but not if they don't,
don't,
and most don't.
okay, I think they said 5%, that notes here somewhere. The businesses don't like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, at the start of the conversation, it was revenue neutral.
Yeah.
And so,
Well,
don't
I
want
think,
to speak for the businesses, but I would guess that's where the,
the goal is that E911 has been running $1 million or more in the red for a number of years. This is the funding source, so I think the goal was to get 911 in black and take that $1 million expense out of its general fund. So I don't think it's gonna be very neutral in the end, because that's what their goal was. Okay. So.
You said 42 tax machinery and then 8 tax something else. What was it? Inventory.
Yes, we got ready with the inventory in Montpelier. I was very happy because I counted a lot of balls and yarn. I was the only one. I had a higher inventory than a lot of businesses.
Do you have any reflections on why these 42 communities, 8 have gone through and taxed these? Do they have special characteristics that more of these things in those communities?
I don't know the answer to that. The only thing I can speak to on that is I do know that the trend is that it has been getting reduced over the last couple decades. So I think at the turn of the century in 2000, 60 towns maybe had tax machinery and equipment. So now we're down to 42. So I don't know the characteristics of those towns or why they did it. I think a lot of them probably have been around for quite a while. We've seen a trend of more towns actually repealing it, I think. I
Yes,
don't know how many have added to create that net negative.
I'm guessing it's really difficult to quantify the value of servers, equipment, varying machinery at different stages. Probably not that sure.
Particularly when, so the truck went down to New Hampshire.
Yes,
They-
there were lots of
Whatever the date was.
questions about the day before the taxes due.
So they would, the town listers and the folks who routinely took it somewhere else would look at a deal on what they agreed to tax them on, and then they would take it to New Hampshire, and it would be the whole number. But the Act 60 got rid of, was instrumental in getting rid of shape of business, personal property, shape and equipment taxes. That was what businesses got out of the benefits of Act 60. It's not being taxed on that stuff anymore.
We're talking about telecommunications here. Do we treat electricity generation, utilities, space, or electrical devices differently?
Now you're talking about modernizing the definition of personal property and creating one for the idea. Creating one for this sort of stuff is the ether, you know.
But you could ask Elko. I know, I mean, there's transmission stations, there's. Same with the CDs, there's computers inside their boxes that run things. But this is voice only, so we forget that this is telecommunications. So. We read a lot of things. Okay, so if we do 546. And do the state taking over the valuation of poles and wires. And then. And this would come in as the towns would be valuating, you'd be doing poles and wires and the towns would end up doing the office equipment that's running, is that how this would work?
Well, in this case, again, we're talking about telecommunications equipment, right,
Right.
not the poles and wires stuff,
No,
so.
poles and wires, you're gonna be evaluating,
Right.
but, and then, the towns, no, they don't have business equipment, so the majority of towns don't. So now, all towns would have to value the computers. And
Telecommunications.
everything attached to telecommunications, I assume the desks and chairs in the office. Those that don't do it would be training, I would assume. And I don't see any vision in here. Or training how to value computers.
Yeah, but again, I think the House, tax department will do it and just mandate those values.
Taxes,
That's,
you will
that's the House
value
position.
their personal property,
I think that's the, yeah, I think that's.
so you're gonna
Sure.
value the personal property, which is not something you do now.
Correct.
So you assume don't have a lot of expertise in that, they have to hire someone.
We'd have a contract, and I think there's an appropriation bill to do that.
Oh, well, that might give you some problems. Okay. So you'd have the contract.
Yeah.
And out of this, they will find money. Okay, so we make some money. Being a fiction.
So new to the space, but it seems, if I may, Chair,
Yes,
with assessing properties that we tax, it's usually just what's attached to the ground, what the structure is. I can't, but I'm not really familiar with this, with commercial property, besides those 42 off communities that are declining. Do assessors really go in and tax things in the houses, or do we usually just look at the structures, the location and the uses that are capable?
Yeah, land and structures, right?
Land and structures. Okay. So this is a departure from our current taxing approach.
For the definition of real property, I think that's fair. It's more inclusive than you.
it's what's in the house that they're taxing now, the furniture.
Is this proposed to tax the furniture, or does it have to at least be attached to like a rack physically attached to the building? Everything?
I don't remember the exact language off the top of my head.
Well, check it, whether it's real property,
It has a pretty expansive
yeah.
definition, I think, of what will constitute real property for telecommunications.
It will be issued, it says, and will be taxed as real property.
For a town of Burlington, the biggest machinery and equipment property taxpayer was the Burlington Free Press.
When they had presses,
Pardon?
when they had presses,
One day had newspaper.
yeah.
So
Sure.
they did, so it was cash registers.
Yeah.
Things of that nature.
Yep. All of it.
They put those on the truck instead of the cash.
It's hard to send printing presses. Okay, we will ask during the fiscal to help us understand what would constitute real property, maybe property valuation.
Yeah, we would have folks on my team who could speak with more expertise into the nuance and the detail as well. Happy to have some folks come back.
Okay,
It's complicated.
so. Yeah, it would be complicated. All right. Any other questions for the commission? No?
Is he gonna talk about the DFR piece we were talking about yesterday, or is that?
No, the
No.
idea of our committee. Okay, but we can't, they're all at a conference, so we can't get them till tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, the one we have them. So, okay, I think that's it, unless anyone has. So we're changing the whole system and we're there. maybe a slow trends. It would change a lot of things and be some
Yeah, I mean,
requirements on local districts.
I think my high level takeaway, right, is tax department was intrigued in the discussion when it started in the House. It got pretty big, maybe a little unwieldy from our perspective, and so the department can't endorse it in the same way.
Okay. So that's the tax changes. We still have the 72% line fee and I'm not finding my notes on like fiscal note on that one. But, no. But we will find out if we can get a breakout of how much each one of these changes will net. Then if the goal is, if our goal is to make 911 solvent, then we will start looking at the numbers and see what they come out as. Okay? If you only have to raise $3 million, that's chump change. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
I'm sure you'll be back. Okay, next we have Rob Fish, again on 657. And Rob, introduce yourself. You're gonna have to get a spring view pretty soon behind you.
I'm hoping any day now that that is going to be the case.
It's all snowing, it's not a week ago.
It's still only April. We shall see. But thank you, Madam Chair, for the privilege of speaking today, and thank you for being able to testify remote. I have a kid with pink eye, so you don't want me anywhere near that building right now.
Probably not.
My name is Rob Fish. I'm the Deputy Director of the Vermont Community Broadband Board. Here to testify on H657. We have, as the previous speaker said, this is complicated. So I'm only going to speak to a few parts of the bill that concern us and encourage you to continue getting testimony from taxation, transportation, and the Public Service Department. First and foremost, I want to say that we are very supportive of the change in the universal service charge. We support this. It does result in a slight increase for the Vermont Community Broadband Board when it goes into effect. This funding covers the rural broadband technical assistant position as well as many of our other operational costs. The reason this has been so important for us currently, and will be even more in the past, is this has allowed us to spend the vast majority of our funds on building infrastructure as opposed to paying our overhead. Act 71 allowed us to take $1.5 million per year for our overhead. We have barely touched that. $4 million from ARPA Capital was supposed to be used to cover our overhead. Once again, we barely touched that. As we move into the next phase, which is funding from the Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment Act, it's going to become even more important. That is a competitive program. So no funding from that program can be used to support the other functions of the VCBB, which include the oversight over the existing ARPA grants and providing support and technical assistance to the communication union districts. So this is we're thrilled that this change is happening. We're also obviously thrilled that we are addressing the deficit with E911 as well. We can't say that like that's important. It is time to modernize some of these rules and regulations and taxes. One thing I do have to say is that this funding is not enough to allow us to fully address other priorities, such as affordability. And I'll get back to that in a moment. I only want to touch on one other part of the bill, and this is with the right-of-way charges. I want to say that we are very supportive of the exemptions to keep this information confidential. We would suggest language that adds the Vermont Community Broadband Board as one of the eligible entities to receive this information and potentially expands upon the uses of it. It's not only regulatory. This would be of assistance for measuring grant compliance and planning as we go forward. Finally, I did want to return to affordability. We are working to address this with our individual grantees, and it will be a part of the BEAD program. We are also going to be deploying some of the connectivity initiative funds to ideally cover some of the expenses associated with long drops, especially ideally for manufactured home communities. This is all in development right now, but there's so much more to be done. We're down to about 2 weeks before 25,000 Vermonters lose the Affordable Connectivity Program subsidy. We can't replace the ACP. The amount that would be required to replace it is beyond anything that's possible this year. We fully understand that. We are instead working to try to mitigate some of the effects. And we also wanted to just put it on your radar, most likely for this year at this point. I must say we were excited when we saw the language added to S181 in your committee. Then it was gone, and we did prepare a few potential interim ideas, including a study and then block grants to address this in the short term and try to develop some best practices. But I did want to just put that out there right now that it's important. It's something we are going to need to address. So, and that's really it. As I said, I want to make sure we leave it to the experts to get into the minutia of there's so much in this bill. It's a work of art in many ways, and I'm glad that they're taking action to address this issue.
Okay.
And I just realized I was never sharing my screen that entire time.
No, that was fun.
So I apologize, but it wasn't that pretty anyway, so.
Universal service, yes, we've been eking out several important programs. And I guess this has found a way to raise enough money in that program to better fund, one essential program out of the red. Probably help you not get into the red. So that's the plus of this. The minuses are all the things we're hearing from other people. So we should probably hear from the listeners, since we're on whether or not they could pick this up. So maybe we get the Listeners Association in, and tell them we're interested in the ability of local listers to do all this business property, or would it take training or money? Okay, any questions for Ron? Don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Last
Bill.
time, someone with pink eye, parent, if that little girl ran over and gave me a great big hug. He's got pink eye.
I'm still fighting it off, but we shall see. But,
Watch your hands.
thank you very much. Feel free to reach out with any questions.
Okay, we will. Thank you.
Have a good day now.
You too. Okay, committee. We have a discussion of the transportation bill, but I think we've done that. So I thought I might ask Mr. Whitaker would like to testify, and I've got some time now. Would you like to?
I'll be better prepared next week since I have.
Okay. Okay. Tomorrow, I'm not sure, we're gonna have to get 546 out, but I've got a couple of amendments. One is the EFRPs. The other one is we don't have the staffing during fiscal. The tax department's been very clear that they don't have the staffing to do the wealth tax, or probably the other study. It's not in the budget at this point, so I think we'll talk about taking those out. I don't think there's anything else in there that's very controversial. Just the budget is coming out very early, probably because this will be a very long committee conference, because the budgets are very different. So they have to get that bill out either tomorrow or Tuesday. I know what Probst is waiting on Monday, they need a little more money, so we standing by. It was suggested that we look at Mason and look at that. I think that, as much as I know, right, I don't know what we're gonna do with this bill, because I haven't quite unwound it enough to understand it. But it's not vital to the budget, so it's some time, doesn't have any money in it, so we can work on that for a while.
Which bill do you mean, H six one five
That's the
seven,
one we're working on, 57,
communications taxes?
the communications taxes. I would like to get 911 out of the red. It's been there for a number of years. And so I guess the money that, whatever's left over goes to broadband. And there frequently isn't anything left. So we will. See if our meal come in tomorrow. We're not getting too backed up. And we'll see, hear from her on why they need the additional money, what's going on. Okay? Anything else anybody would like to talk about? All right. Adjourn.